Hello everybody, this is Kira Show here, and I finished Titanfall 2. What the fuck? Second, multiplayer is fun. Now, let us begin. Now, whenever we last left off, Deku, he had just experimented and figured out how to 3D map a blueprint using the pilot's helmets. Now, let us cut to a couple months later. Deku, he has his experimental mech created. Although it's a bit smaller than the Titans that the pilots use, it is still functional. However, his problem is that he just needs a power source. So, that is going to be where May would just come up with an idea. She asked Deku if he can just use fuel or, well, any just power source in general. To which Deku would explain that he cannot. The mechs that the pilots use, their battery, it's, quite simply, made a certain way. If they tried to take one apart, or he looked at an old relic and tried to reverse engineer it, could be unstable. So, he's now trying to find out exactly what he can use as a power source. And he's asking BT to run possible scans. I want to say BT, he would know common data, or at least what could be used as a fuel source, but he doesn't know what they use in the mechs, since he was never deployed in combat. Since this is the AI that was rewritten. Now, May, she's gotten her steampunk goggles look, while Deku, he is also thinking. He's created his own pair of goggles that he can use. May, being a bit curious as to what they are. To which Deku would show her one thing, telling her that he made them with his quirk, and since she was talking about steampunk, it took him a while, but he found the glasses she recommended to him, which are these. Now, these are actually some of the best looking ones I could find, and it's quite simply a bit more futuristic. Ignore that screw and everything else on it, but he got those and modified them to somewhat work. After a few times, he would have gotten it right, and he's able to actually use his quirk and create 3D mapping, along with linking BT to the glasses and actually getting them changed around a bit. So not only can Deku just use them normally, but he would have eventually created these. These work a bit better, as compared to these and this. Deku's able to bring that glass down and actually scan things and modify them, while he's able to use these to enhance and zoom, and he has a wireless transmitter so that he can connect with BT and have him work through that. Now, Deku, I want to say he is roughly 8 years old at this point, still trying to figure out the power source, to which he would ask his dad, and his dad would somewhat have to tell him that it's a bit more complicated. If he needs the power source, he can try ordering it, but if it doesn't go through, I might be able to help. So Deku would order it. Cut to about a month later, whenever it does not arrive. His dad would just tell him that he'll contact someone. The pilot's program may not be public anymore, but they at least still have a few pilots left, since they were able to at least get them back off their feet with this new program they started, trying to stop and actually take down the pilots that are using their mechs that are villains. Now, they were able to try and take the villains down, but Deku, he would have been talking to a pilot, as his dad would have been able to at least get him to meet the man. The man would be looking over exactly what Deku created, telling him that this is actually pretty good. But he knows about the power source problem. So he's brought this little puppy, as he would hold up a battery, saying that he can't really give him much on it, but they're strapped for money. His dad has been helping to try and prove to the government that they deserve their funding once more, since rebuilding a program from scratch is a bit more difficult than he ever thought. And this battery was already damaged, so I'm going to leave it with you. The battery is not unstable, but, well, there's a few scientists here who, if it does become unstable, can help. So, at least work with this outside. Now, Deku, he would somewhat move his workshop closer to the door and have to trade spaces with another person, actually being closer to Mei. Now, he would be outside, somewhat scanning and looking around at this. Now, as he's scanning it, he asked BT to create a virtual map and a blueprint, to which BT would begin, as Deku and a few of the scientists would begin to carefully take apart and study it. As they are doing so, Deku would tell BT to analyze the blueprints for what BT can see, and to try and put them together. To which he would be doing while Deku is somewhat taking apart and analyzing these. People somewhat watching Deku. As Deku would see the power source somewhat getting a bit curious. He would have put a glove on, as he would have taken a little chunk and put it into a vial. As he does so, he would have put the battery back together, as he would take the vial to a lab, or, well, another scientist. They specialize in a field that they use technology for. It allows them to somewhat create artificial minerals, or see what type would be best for the robots to use. Now, he would have taken this to them, asking them exactly what it is, as they would have somewhat explained the process of making it. You have to put these materials together, do this to them, and somewhat, well, basically you have to melt a bunch of stuff together, put metals into it, and a little bit of a cake to it, basically sending an electrical node through it, meaning that you'd basically get to shock it to activate it. Now, Deku hearing that would be a bit concerned, because that basically means that they're making an artificial form of uranium. However, it would still be good in theory. Deku would try working on a bit of a different subject. He's trying to find out exactly how you'd be able to make it more stable and put it to better use. But he would have made this bad batch of the power source. Now, he would have done so actually creating and getting his mech up and operational, as he would have linked BT to it. BT would have been trying to get used to the actual movements and way he can move, as he would just tell BT that they need to somewhat stress test him a little bit. So, will he be good? BT would say that he is at about 50% operational power, so they should be fine. As Deku would take BT around and actually lift up and move some of the projects people need, testing his own and helping them in the process, since they have helped him. Now then, Mei has been a bit curious about exactly what BT can do, so she would have been talking with Deku through a piloting helmet, ask him exactly what is he going to do with BT now, because she has somewhat of an idea. Deku would just say that he does too, but BT may not like it. Which is whenever BT would just ask exactly what is their plan. Deku would say that they have a little bit of a course. Basically, they would set up a bit of target practice for BT, as they would allow him to fire off targets, along with Deku testing his autopilot, which as soon as he leaves the mech, it already almost falls, but that was a bit different. Deku, he would have to recalibrate it and actually mess with it on his wrist, telling BT that he needs to stay with him, bud. Are you good? Are you okay? To which BT would answer with yes. Although, he believes that he was not suited to be on autopilot just yet. Deku would tell BT that that's perfectly fine. The mech is working fine and is actually doing well. The power source, however, that's the problem. It's somewhat, hurting the chassis. So I will have to actually modify it again. Understood, pilot. To which Deku would somewhat smile, hearing that word. Now, Mei would just ask Deku if she can give it a shot. To which he would have done one thing, slipping off the helmet and handing it over to Mei, saying that right now it's a bit wonky, but it's because he's not interfaced or mentally linked with BT yet. So it will perform about the same as it did for me. To which she would have been a bit confused. Linked? Oh yeah, that's right. Now, with that being said, she would hop in a BT and somewhat move him around, as she's just testing and seeing what he can do. Now, she would have been taking notes on exactly what BT is able to do and what he's not able to do, as whenever she does get out of the mech, she would just start talking with Deku, saying that, she's had a few ideas and she's somewhat made something. To which Deku would be a bit confused. She would just explain that, you know how I haven't been in the lab for a little while? Well, I've been somewhat drawing up blueprints. She would just pull up the helmet as the visor would come up. She would just say that these blueprints, they're a bit iffy, but she's somewhat got them down. She based them on something that she saw before, so it's gonna be a bit... yeah, but she will need his help on it. Now, she just needs help getting it operational and actually put together, along with ordering the pieces. Deku would just say he understands, but in return she has to help him with the power source. To which she would say yes. Now then, with that being said, Deku, he would look over these, as he has one little thing. He's modified the wrist bracer and has somewhat of a... If you guys have ever seen Iron Man where he has a repulsor and it glows, he's somewhat added something that he can scan things with, so another way of helping his quirk. Or at least a support item. He didn't make it though, it was a gift from his dad, so he's at least been looking into these. Now, he would just go over and scan it as BT would just bring it up on Deku's goggles. Deku would just spin it around as he begins to look at it and somewhat take it apart. Where Mei just watching Deku just move his hands in the air and somewhat throw them outwards. As Deku would say that he sees. So. Well. A lot of this is a bit weird, but are you sure about this? To which she would just say, yeah, but that's not the problem. Oh, really? What is? Well, one of the only ways to get this to work is... she'd hold up another thing of blueprints, saying it's similar to what the pilots do. Oh, the mechanical muscles, right? Now then, May would just say that a lot of stuff that are on the blueprints, it's a bit weird and iffy, but, well, the pilots, they use these suits. And, well, it's gonna be a bit difficult, so can you help me try designing them? To which Deku, he would say yes, because you basically have to create, I believe it's a specialized synthetic muscle, basically. They're a bit harder to use because you would have to use a bit of nanobots. Getting access to nanobots is a bit hard, but he would have been asking his dad and talking with him. His dad would have seen the potential, so he would have actually asked for a copy of these blueprints. As him and his dad would begin talking, Inko would just ask exactly what are they talking about, as his dad would just turn saying that they somewhat have been talking about these ideas. But it's been a bit difficult. Deku's trying to get his BT off the ground while I'm trying to get the program off the ground. However, these new augmentations can actually help the pilots. So it will work perfectly. Now, this is whenever Deku, he would just hand over the blueprints as his dad would just say that this will work great. Handing over exactly what he found. Basically, he would hand over what seems to be a more stable version of the power source. It's a bit more easy to make, too, with 3 to 4 substitutes of the minerals. Now, with that being said, Deku, he would have gotten to work on somewhat trying to make these. Actually going to forge them, as Mei would watch Deku do so. Deku's just hitting it with a hammer over and over again as she's telling him that he has to hit it harder. Since she's basically standing there too, hitting down on the mineral. She would tell Deku that if he's going to be a pilot, then he might have to build up some muscle. To which he would just look at her saying that she'll need to too then. Where she would somewhat laugh at Deku. Now, this is whenever Deku, he would actually go to pick up a large wrench. One of these two-handed ones. He needs it for BT because there is a gear that's a bit too loose on his leg. After he installed the power source, he somewhat saw it. Now, he would go to pick up the wrench, as whenever he does so, he somewhat stumbles backwards, finding that this wrench is actually pretty heavy. Someone would have said to Deku not to strain himself, because that's about 50 pounds. Deku would have been somewhat curious as he would walk over to BT and try lifting it above his head. So, he was not ready for getting physically active. Yes, he has used tools and done things like that, but that's mainly for creating things. So that was just a little bit of working out to create BT. But now he has to figure out how to... Now he basically has to figure out how to work out so that it would be easier for him in the pilot program. Now, he would try running and find that it's difficult. He would try weightlifting, finding that it's a bit too difficult and it leaves him a bit sore, but he would just not give up, as he would continuously try and try and try, working on these synthetic muscles with Mei and eventually getting one created. As whenever he does slide it over his arm, he actually does feel it somewhat work differently. He would just bend down to pick up the wrench, as whenever he does so, he finds it to be a little bit easier. But it's still heavy. Actually having to use two hands and somewhat finding it easier to carry it and move it. However, that's just his arm. The rest of his body is still making up for the, progress, since it is still 50 pounds. Now, a scientist would have told the man would tell Deku that the synthetic muscle, it is too thin. It will burst if you have them like that. Besides, the suits the pilots wear underneath them, they're specifically made of that thickness, so they won't burst, but they'll at least be able to move better and physically better. Allowing for perfect physical fitness, along with one more thing. To which Deku would have asked, what is that? He would have said that most pilots, whenever they're on duty or in the program, they have nanobots in their system to allow for faster healing and better mobility, since it increases your heart rate and help you by speeding up your metabolism a little bit. Deku would have been a bit more curious, as he would have asked the man how he knows this. He would just say that he's a retired pilot, but he somewhat needed a job. The program was the best thing for him, since it basically allows him to do what he loves without having to step into the field, since he's a bit too old for that now. As Deku would just look at this man, he would realize that this man, he may be 60 years old, but he still looks pretty buff. So he would just ask him if he knows how to make nanobots, or at least has blueprints. To which he would say, no. Making nanobots is a bit harder because you have to go through certain processes. Also, you basically have to replicate them. The machine over there, it should help you, but it's a bit iffy since it's old. You can put in for a newer model, but you might have to buy one yourself. As Deku would look over this, he would go over the machine as he would see it, requesting and actually putting in what looks to be a little vial of these nanobots. Whenever he slips them in, the machine would analyze them and tell. Now, the machine would tell Deku that it would take about 2 to 3 weeks to create 333 liters or milliliters of nanobots, which is basically the size of a sports drink, or at least an energy drink, in the smaller cans. Deku would just be a bit annoyed, saying that that is a bit too long, but he can probably wait, as he would have done so. He would ask his dad later on in the day exactly if they have a new machine or replicator. His dad would explain that they somewhat do, but it's kind of annoying. It takes about 3 to 4 hours to create something. Deku would ask what about nanobots? To which his dad would just say it doesn't need to, he can use his quirk. Deku would explain that he kinda needs a lot of nanobots for a project. His dad being a little interested, asking exactly what is it? Well, I'm trying to program them to make synthetic muscles. Also, kinda so I can be more like a pilot. To which his dad would be a bit curious. As his eyes would widen, he would just say that that's not happening. Nanobots in your system is a bit dangerous. Besides, the pilots, they are physically trained to have them in their system. Just putting them in doesn't make you a pilot. You have to condition your body to a certain way first. To which Deku would be a bit annoyed, thinking that his hard work is going to be for nothing then. His dad would just ask him exactly why does he need them and what is going on. He would just ask his dad to help him, since he's going to do this alone or without him. His dad, being a bit annoyed, would just say that he can. But at least explain to me one thing. You're not putting nanobots in your system now, are you? No. Okay, good. Well, listen to me. You need to start running more. You need to start lifting a bit more, and you also do need to start eating a little bit better. Also, you need to sleep more. And lay off the coffee for a while. To which Deku would be a bit annoyed, telling May that he's basically under house arrest. To which she would somewhat laugh at him. Now, over the next couple weeks to months, Deku would be doing this. As whenever he finally gets to a certain level of physically fit, his dad would tell him that it's time, and that he should be able to make them. Along with Deku actually training with this old engineer who used to be a pilot. Now then, that is going to be where I leave things off of, guys. I do hope you enjoyed the video, and have an amazing day. I'll catch you guys in the next part.